Let's take another look at infinitives of purpose. Remember, they give a reason for why something happens. Our basic sentence format is subject and verb, and then in order to or to, followed by a base verb and an optional clause. Remember, the base verb always follows infinitive to. For example, I eat food in order to survive. That's the reason why I eat food, right? To survive. They are attending driver's education classes to gain road safety knowledge. Again, this is the reason why they're attending. We're going to the gym in order to work out, right? The reason why we're going somewhere. We can also give a negative reason, subject, verb, in order not to. Now it's important that you put the not between in order and to. Don't split up the base verb in the infinitive to. Put the not before the infinitive to. And then, for example, we started eating healthier food in order not to experience heart problems when we get older, right? So we're eating healthier because we don't want to experience heart problems when we get older, right? The reason isn't positive necessarily. Of course, there are positive reasons, but in this particular case, we're saying we're doing it to prevent something else. Another example, he made sure to get to bed early the night before the big exam in order not to be tired during the test. So he didn't want to be tired during the test, and that is the reason that he made sure to get to bed early the night before the big exam. This is the same thing as saying subject, verb, and then because and stating the reason. Some of you might find this a little bit easier just to say the reason using because. However, you want to make sure that because comes in the middle of a sentence, there's no comma before or after, and we don't put a full stop before because and start a new sentence with because. The reason is included in the rest of the sentence. For example, they decided to cancel their vacation to Kuwait because they didn't want to spend the extra money on the hotel. We do not end the sentence there and then start another sentence with because. This second sentence would be incomplete. Because can come in two places. We could take this because here, put it in the beginning of the sentence, put a comma, and it would be the same thing. But the because clause is not a standalone sentence. It is a dependent clause. Because they didn't want to spend the extra money on the hotel, comma, again, if because comes in the beginning of the sentence, put a comma, and then they decided to cancel their vacation to Kuwait. Right, second example, he stopped at the red light because he didn't want to get a ticket from the police. The reason why he stopped at the red light was that he did not want to get the ticket from the police. Once again, we do not put a full stop here and then start a new sentence with a capital B because this second sentence is incomplete. It's what's called a dependent clause. If it has because at the beginning of a sentence, then we need a second clause. We need an independent clause, and a comma must separate the dependent and independent clause. That's perfectly fine, but we absolutely do not put this in a standalone sentence, right? It might be easier just to say because and the reason than to say in order not to blank. Future time clauses have also been covered previously. Future time clauses kind of piggyback on this because independent/dependent clause ordering. If the independent clause comes first, then we don't have a comma, right? If the time clause comes first, then we need a comma separating the time clause and the rest of the sentence. For example, when you get into the habit of studying, so we know that it's our time clause because we have when here, and then we have our subject, verb, and an object clause. When you get into the habit of studying, comma, you do well on your exams. You do well on your exams is an independent clause. It could stand alone as its own sentence. But since it's connected to a time clause, we need that comma, and then this time clause absolutely needs another independent clause following that comma. Second example, as I passed through the traffic light, it turned red. We cannot end the sentence here, as I passed through the traffic light. That is not a full sentence. We need the comma, and then we need an independent clause. We know it's independent because it has a subject, a verb, and an object without any time reference words. Next example, we have the independent clause coming first. You should wait until your father gets home. There's our independent clause. We have use, the subject, and then should wait as our modal verb until your father gets home. or actually we have a double independent clause, or a double time clause here, sorry. You should wait. We could end the sentence right there. You should wait. But first we have to wait until father gets home, and then we have another time word here, before you turn on the movie. So we have two different time references here. You should wait until your father gets home, and we could probably end the sentence right there. But we have another time clause, before you turn on the movie. Next example, we were watching TV. Right? We were watching TV is a full sentence on its own. We could end the sentence here, and that first one would be fine, but this part here, starting with while, would not be okay. Right? We now need a comma. Sorry, no comma. We need to add the independent clause with the dependent clause, and we've worked with while/when before. So we were watching TV while you were playing basketball outside. These two things were happening at the same time. Now if we put this independent clause second, capitalize while, then we would need the comma. Right? While you were watching TV, sorry, while you were playing basketball outside, we were watching TV inside. Right? That's fine to order it that way, but remember that you need that comma if you have the time clause, or the dependent clause coming first. By the time we got to the airport, next example, by the time, we know that's the time clause, right, because we have our time reference here. So we need the comma, and then what had happened by the time we got to the airport? The plane had already left. The plane had already left is a complete sentence on its own, but since we have a time clause, here we have that comma, and then we need to connect them together as one sentence. I took off my shoes as soon as I got home. Took off my shoes is an independent clause. There's no time reference here. We could end it after shoes, but we have this time reference here, and so we need to connect the two to make one bigger sentence. So as soon as I got home means at the same time, or immediately, when I arrived home, I took off my shoes. The phone rang just as I picked it up. Just as is our time reference. The phone rang could be a full sentence. I picked it up could be a full sentence, but we're connecting these two things. We're saying they happened at the same time using just as. Until you own a home, right? Until is our time reference, and so you own a home is then followed by a comma because it's our time clause. You probably won't know what an incredible responsibility it is. This could be a full sentence, but since we have our time clause, we put a comma and then put them together as one sentence. Before the goalkeeper could react, the striker kicked the ball into the top corner. Again, before is our time reference word, and so before the goalkeeper could react, now is our time clause. We need a comma and then put the independent clause second. We can switch the order of these independent and dependent clauses in all of these sentences by only adding or removing a comma, and each sentence would then mean the same thing. Either way you put the dependent clause or the independent clause first, it doesn't matter. But remember, if you have the time clause or the dependent clause first, you need a comma separating these two, and you absolutely need to put the time clause with an independent clause in order for it to be a complete sentence.